Okay, let's start. So, welcome, everybody. So, welcome to the 2021. So, this is the Sprint 41 summary and demo from the Kiali and Jaeger team, the first sprint demo that we do for this year. Yeah, so first, we are going to have several speakers today. We are going to have Mark, we are going to have Xavi, Joel, Edgar, Gary, or Yuka. So, and as always, I will start with some summary where we are. So in the Sprint 41, we is working with 7 epics in progress. We closed more than 24 issues, 18 pull request merge. One thing that I would like to say thank you is that the number of contributors that we have in the project from the community is increasing. We have 63 backend contributors in the Kiali project and 37 developers adding contributions into frontend. So thank you very much for that. So as you know, or that we plan, or the issues that we have, or what we put in our public and in the Kiali projects, you can see that, and just thank you for helping us to improve the project, right? So let's continue with the Sprint 41 highlights. So this is a sprint was more as hardening a sprint, so we didn't have a lot of new features because we are coming from the break from the new year's break. So, but this sprint we were focused especially in bug fixes, some community issues related about the caching, also adding support for custom controllers when user deploy third-party frameworks in the Kubernetes cluster, and also want to make sure that this third-party frame was working with Istio and also with Kiali. Also, bug fixes around authentications, bug fixing about the proxy status. Good to mention that we updated all the third-party libraries related to the Kubernetes client and the Prometheus client that was also requested by the community for services as well. And also we are working hard about the dog. For now, I guess that we are going to have a contributor developer. So Mark, so welcome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I give you the opportunity to share your screen. Welcome to the sprint summary, and you can tell us the feature you are working on.
Thanks, Lucas. So everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So I built out a reverse proxy approach to authentication. So it's a little bit different than the other auth strategies that are presently handled by Kiali, with the key difference of it's actually offloading all of the authentication off to a reverse proxy. And there are a couple of benefits to this approach. One, it takes session management off of Kiali. So that makes it a lot easier to use short-lived tokens. I know when I first brought this up, that was an issue that came up with why it was kind of hard to do OpenID Connect with short-lived tokens inside of the app itself, whereas now you can actually just offload that. That becomes the reverse proxies problem. Gives you session management, better cookie management, in that whatever cookies.
Oh, we miss you, Mark?
I think we lost him.
Oh. Okay, sorry, Mark. I guess that's.
Am I back?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Sorry about
no problem.
The token, the user's token, never goes back to the user's browser, which when you're using OpenID Connect isn't that important, but when you're using impersonation becomes really important. I'll talk about impersonation next. So that's just the generic benefits of using a reverse proxy with Kiali. An additional benefit is the ability to use impersonation. So impersonation is a feature inside of Kubernetes where you can authorize a service account to act on behalf of other users. So when you run kube control -- as, if you're testing policies, that's using impersonation. In this instance, what you're doing with impersonation is you're saying, okay, instead of getting a token specifically for that user, I'm going to run as a service account that has impersonation capabilities. And when the user logs in, I'm going to tell Kiali, hey, I'm Mark, or I'm Lucas, or I'm somebody else. Here are my groups. Here's my user information. And then Kiali can then use that information when talking with the API server. So the big benefit to this approach is that it'll work with managed clusters. So if you're running on EKS, AKS, pick your favorite managed cluster where OpenID Connect is not a available option, you can use impersonation to still be able to get that same level of functionality where Kiali is running as a user rather than having to use token implementation for multi-tenancy. So we've got a customer. It was actually the customer that sponsored us to write this feature for Kiali, where they showed us that they had like a 15-page document that they were using to give to users that were using Kiali of this is how you get your token, download it. This is what you need to do to manage it. Be careful with it. Versus now it's okay. I'm just going to log in and they're in. So it makes for a much better user experience, and it makes for a much easier and more secure onboarding process. There are security issues that come up when you're talking about impersonation because the service account that your reverse proxy runs as is now a privileged account. So there are some things that you should do to isolate it and help protect that account. One is your reverse proxy should be running with the token request API if it's available. This is important because service accounts inside of Kubernetes are long-lived. They don't have any expiration. So if it gets compromised, your only recourse is to delete the service account and recreate it. But it's very hard to be able to track when that account's being abused. So the nice thing about token request service account token is that it can have a very shorter lifespan. You can limit it. I think the minimum is 10 minutes, which is a lot better than infinity. The other thing that your reverse proxy should be doing is it should be isolating access to Kiali to using network policies. So making sure that the only way you can access your reverse proxy is through your ingress control or service mesh, and the only way you're getting to Kiali is through that reverse proxy. So that adds an additional layer of security on top of the impersonation.
Mark, I don't know if you had more than one slide, but we lost your slides and we lost your audio, your screen share.
Nope, I only have one slide, but let me go ahead and share because I want to make sure I show off the demo too. Am I back?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to fire up my VPN here now because my hardline network died on me. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Here we go. So what I have here for a demo, I always say the sign of a good identity management demo is it's wholly unspectacular because things just work the way you would expect them to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is show off with impersonation. So I'm logging in here. This is it might actually be a good idea to show off the actual steps that's going on because it's a little tough to see. So going to this Kiali.app, this is a reverse proxy that is sitting in front of Kiali. It's open unison. It's my company's open source project. So it's a little heavier than OAuth 2 proxy, but it's also got a few extra features. And you can see I immediately got bounced over to my central identity provider before we even talked to Kiali. And then when I sign in, go straight past the authentication screen. And if I just pick let's see if I can find authenticate. So here's the authenticate, and you can see that the response, I guess it actually does include the token when we're talking about the header. I think with impersonation, I took out the token. It says who the user is. And then you can see here with the cookies, we're actually blocking any cookies that get generated. So the only cookies that are coming back are the reverse proxies cookies. Those the cookies Kiali generates. I think there's a cookie Kiali generates. Gets stored at the reverse proxy layer. And you can see that it knows who I am by M. Mosley. So I'm actually going to log out here, and I'm going to switch myself over to using, I'm going to switch myself over to edit, Open Unison Orchestra and Open Unison. I'm going to change myself from using impersonation. I know you can't see what I'm doing right now. It's impersonation is false. So what I did was I told Open Unison, so I did was I told Open Unison, hey, I don't want to use impersonation anymore. I want to use just passing in the token. And by doing that, actually, we're going to have to go back and look at the authentication because it shouldn't be passing back that token. But I'll look at that afterwards. Instead of passing in the impersonation headers, we're going to be passing in the straight up OpenID Connect token. So that way, that'll just get passed straight through, similar to the way that the dashboard does it when you deploy with reverse proxy. Just waiting for the reverse proxy to settle down here. Okay, good. So that's not right anymore. So here I'm going to go ahead and log in. So I'm logging in again. Now the big difference you're going to see here is that it shows my full OpenID Connect username. So the main additional interaction we added to Kiali was when you're doing the header strategy is we're actually passing in we're passing in we're calling the token request API inside, or not token request, I'm sorry, token review API inside of Kubernetes to actually get the name of the user out of the token. So what this allows us to say is that the reverse proxy doesn't actually have to generate an OpenID Connect token. It can generate any token that the API server will recognize. So if you're running this on like Amazon, an EKS instance, if your reverse proxy knows how to generate a Amazon token, this will work as opposed to having to generate OpenID Connect. So it allows a lot more flexibility by not making that assumption. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, so thank you a lot, Mark, for this contribution. Just a reminder for everyone that after the summary and demos, we are going to have a Q&A sessions, not recorded, to make everyone comfortable. And Mark will be here if someone else would like to, to share or question or details about that. So thank you again, Mark, about that. So I'm going to again to share my screen, and let's continue with the highlights of the Sprint 41. So Joel, I guess it's the new contribution about the graph trace navigation. Would you like to comment
Yes.
about this?
Yes, hello. So this is a small UX addition improvement about tracing in the graph. So Kiali is able to show traces over the graph. As you can see here, it's highlighted edges and nodes that where the trace go through. And the addition here is about being able to navigate all along the trace within the graph. So why it's important is because when you have complex traces, you can have several, like you can have a back and forth traffic between different nodes and things like this, which makes it a little bit complicated to navigate just by clicking on graph nodes when you want to go to the next logical span and to follow the relationships between spans of a given trace. So here now we have a list of related spans that you can see on the side panel. So on the right here, the related span with a parent span and any number of children. The symbol, the blue symbol, like you know, the location mark, when you click on that, you will have the corresponding span being highlighted, while the node in the graph that holds that span will be highlighted on the graph with a small animation. And you can click on the different links like parent, child 1, child 2, etc. to navigate in the graph. And when you click on that, it will refocus the graph node to the one of the related span. So that's the way to navigate without, I mean, to keep the relations, the hierarchical relations between the different span in a tree. Yeah, that's all for me.
Thank you a lot, Joel. Thanks. So I guess that now I'm going to start sharing, and I guess Edgar, would you like to share the screen?
Yes, I can do that. Let me see. Can you at least show that last slide that you had on your screen?
Yeah, sure.
I think that I can explain that specific one in yours.
Yeah.
Yep. So there was a small improvement in the graph when it comes to the idle edges. I mean, this is something that was probably a little confusing for some users because there were some gray edges sometimes in the graph. Those edges were mainly, I mean, past communications that no longer have traffic in your service mesh. So we were displaying this just because, well, it might be of interest to show those edges that are no longer having traffic. Maybe it's something that you can use to diagnose that something is happening in your mesh. It might give a little better idea of the topology of the overall mesh when something is broken and not flowing traffic. But also sometimes there are some use cases where it's legitimate that you stop it having traffic and those edges and services and workloads might become just a little is garbage at the end. So we added a new option. You can see that in the image that we are pointing to in a red rectangle, the new option that is named idle edge. That option is now turned off by default. So you will no longer see by default these edges that are being pointed with the blue arrows. This is a small feature or small new option that we added. On the next slide, I think that is following the multi-cluster feature. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so I think that now I can share my screen and start small live demo. Let's see if I can. Everything goes smoothly. Okay, wrong screen. Right. I hope you are seeing my browser with the Istio page. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, we can see it.
Right. So I'm showing here the Istio documentation for MultiPrimary on different networks. This is multi-cluster installation of Istio. I'm showing this because we recently added some new features that are related to multi-cluster support. It's some small experimental support. It's not meant to be stable yet, but we are releasing those new features so that we can get user feedback. And the new multi-cluster support was mainly tested with Istio 1.8, so don't expect it may or may not work with prior version of Istio. So we suggest that if you want to try this new feature, well, just go ahead and try using 1.8 or probably the upcoming 1.9 version. We mainly tested with this scenario or this setup multi-primary on different networks. We didn't yet test with primary remote or multi-primary on same networks. I mean, every other setups are not tested. So if you happen to have this installation or this setup in your environment, please give it a try to the new features that I'm going to show you. So just to give a little idea of how my environment is set up, I will go to the terminal and I will just show you that I have two clusters running here. I have one named Kukulkan and the other one is named Source. There are two different clusters. I will use a tool. I will split my terminal in two, vertically in two, and use a tool named K9S. That is a nice terminal client for Kubernetes. So in this side, on the right side, I'm going to show you how is my setup in the SOTS cluster. You can see that I have these namespaces. I already have book info installed here. There is the Istio system, so I have Istio here, and there is the Kiali operator. On the left side, I will try to open again this tool, and I will show you the other cluster. I'm going to use Kukulkan here, so I'm switching to that here. And I will show you the namespaces. It's pretty much the same. There are a few differences, but the relevant or important things to know is that I also have book info here, and I have here Istio system. There is no Kiali operator because in this site I installed Kiali using the Helm charts, so I'm not using the operator in this site. Just it's a little thing for you to know. I'm going to show you the Istio namespaces of both sites. These are the pods that are available in Kukulkan. You can see that I have Grafana, I have some ingress and egress gateways, and there is Istio Jaeger, here is Kiali, and there is Prometheus. It looks like a more or less a standard installation. The only difference is that I have this east-west gateway. This is related to the multi-cluster installation. So you need to add this new gateway when you are following this set of instructions that I showed in the Istio documentation. On the other side, I will also show what's available in the Istio system. Let me see if this responds. Okay. It's pretty much the same. The only small difference is that Kiali is not here because Kiali is installed in a separate namespace, but that is not relevant for my demo. Just keep in mind that I have Kiali here. I will show you now the book info namespaces of both sites. This is book info. I will show you the pods, and you can see that here I only have ratings, reviews V2, and reviews V3. Hopefully you are familiar with the book info demo, but if not, just think that these are some microservices running in this side. On the other side, I will also show you how is my book info. And basically, this is the rest of the microservices that are forming the book info. There is the product page, which is usually the entry point of this application. There is details v1 and reviews v1. You can see that basically the book info is split between the two clusters. This is the entry point, and we have v1 and then v2 and v3. The other two versions of reviews are in the other cluster, and we have ratings here, which is not present in Kukulkan. So I'm going to show you how Kiali looks like from this cluster, name it Kukulkan. Let me switch to my browser. Yes, so I'm going to go to the Kukulkan, to the Kiali instance in Kukulkan. This is the IP address of, or this is the how I go to this instance. The first thing that we are going to see is that Kiali is showing you exactly what are you accessing or what Kiali instance you are accessing. So this is the first thing that we'll see, and well, we can clearly see that we are going to the Kiali instance installed in Kukulkan. The next thing that we added in order to support, or this initer support multi-cluster, is this mesh page. This is basically discovery of how your mesh is formed. It will try to find all the clusters that are accessible to the control plane, and well, if they are accessible to the control plane, they should also be part of your mesh. It will also try to resolve what networks are hosting your control plane, because this is using the multiple network approach in Istio. Well, basically each cluster is on its own network. There are a few additional information, like what's the API address, the cluster API server. This is the address of the cluster API server, and it's also giving just for information purposes the Istio secret that you had to set up and for setting up this multi-cluster installation. This secret is basically what if we go back to the Istio docs, this is the step that you are doing. This is the step that you are doing here to enable, almost at the end, to enable endpoint discovery. You are creating some secrets with these commands. And this is the name of the secrets that were created by using those commands. So basically, this is the mesh page. If we go to the other side, or the other Kiali, this is the other side, you will clearly also see that it's stating that you are on the other cluster. Also, the browser title bar has the name of the cluster or the home cluster, so that if you happen to have multiple browser tabs like here, you can easily find the instance that you want to inspect. The mesh page will look quite the same. The only difference is that this little star stating the home cluster will basically be on the other row. If you have more clusters, this list should populate with whatever number of clusters you have in your mesh. So let's go to the graph. This is where you will see some other new features that are supporting this multi-cluster setup. you can see that, okay, we can only see product page details and reviews services. There is a new feature in the display menu. There are actually two new features. You have cluster boxes and namespace box. I will enable both of them so that you can see live how this looks. We have probably the positioning of the nodes is not going to be optimal, but well, we can rearrange them so that we can have a better positioning. So you can see that these two new display options, at least with regards with the cluster boxes, will now group nodes and will give you the name of the cluster that where each service or workload belongs. You can see that we have, well, the two Kukulkan cluster and SOTS cluster, and you can clearly see how the traffic is flowing between the two clusters and from one workload to the remote service. This is not a joint view. I want to emphasize that the Kiali is not yet offering a joint view. It's a little uncertain whether we are going to offer a joint view or a unified view. This is basically what Istio is providing in its telemetry. Remember that I showed you that each cluster has a standard, or not a standard, but with a full installation with its own add-ons. So each cluster has Prometheus. So what we are seeing is the metrics that are stored in Kukulkan, in the Prometheus that is hosted Kukulkan. So I say that this is not a unified view because if we go to the other Kiali, you will see basically the rest of the traffic. I will enable these two boxes again. So you can see that the reviews workloads are receiving traffic or are generating traffic. And if we go back to here, it's this side, B2 and B3. But what you can see here in this graph is that these two workloads are pushing traffic to the rating services. That's invisible to the other side. Again, this is the local telemetry in SOTS. So basically you will need to inspect the two Kiali instances so that you can have the overall idea of how traffic is flowing. And well, there is also the new namespaces boxes option that you clearly can see here that is basically enclosing each services and denoting what namespace they belong to. This is mostly the initial support for multi-cluster, so that you can clearly see, at least in some cases, how traffic is flowing from one side to the other. Side panels also were updated. There is a new version of when you select the cluster boxes, you will see the incoming, outgoing, and total traffics, and also some charts if possible. And well, I think that the graph itself is more or less complete regarding the multi-cluster support. And that's what I have for now.
Okay, it's quite impressive, Edgar. I'm like to see this new experimental feature in Kiali and show it to the community and start to collect feedback on how it works, or what could be next steps. Or multi-cluster is a very big, active, and dynamic topic. Also in all the fronts. So really thank you for all the people that have been working on this effort.
Okay, so I hope you enjoy these new features.
Okay, so we are a little bit running out of time and we have two more speakers. So I guess I'm going to pass the mic to Xavi, that is going to give you some quick demo update or all the features that we have around the Envoy config and Envoy login debugging. So Xavi, would you like to share your screen and
Sure.
take the stage?
I'll do a quick one. So can you see my Kiali? I think so.
Yeah.
This is like a small feature, but it goes in the line of we want to provide also observability of the service mesh of the control plane and the data plane, not only on the applications on load deployed on our system. So if we already had this in the detail for this is the workload page, we already have this log about the Istio proxy, so the envoy. So for every request going to a pod and from a pod outside, we have this log of everything registered in the envoy, right? So we see that here we have a bunch of 200 responses for the details endpoint. So you can do as usual, right? Show a specific lines or hide some specific lines. For example, all the put details, of course, as one, but product page, no one is calling product page, right? So you can play a little bit with that. So in the line of observability of the service mesh, what we included and showed last sprint, it was the envoy details model where we show all the configuration. So you can play here and look for clusters and so on. You can just find this is the whole cluster config dump of an envoy, including the routes, including the it was the routes, it was the clusters, it was the listeners, secrets, and routes, I think. But besides that, we also kind of process the information and kind of the same way as the Istio cattle does with the proxy status, proxy config subcommand. So now what we've done is add extra filtering. For example, in here, if you want to see all the clusters, the similar services where this specific pod has access to, for example, to book info. So what you can do is just filter it and see, okay, usual thing, right? I want to see all the fully qualified domain names containing book info, mean that it's in the book info namespace, and there's a specific port, and you can see really easy. It's like that you have different subsets for example, this one, the details, you can filter by subsets. There's for each cluster, this pod has access, so you can easily see which is the subset going to, and also which is the responsible destination rule defining this cluster, right? In the following features, we want to enrich this view with links to the service, to the destination rule for users to better respond to critical scenarios, right? The same we have for routes. And for example, here we want to see, for example, all the domains that contains book info, right? So we have this and matching all the path, every request receiving every path, right? And also the virtual services, who defines or who are related to that route. So again, this is mainly for helping people understanding what Istio what Istio is doing behind the scenes with regard with all data plane, with all the envoys deployed in every pod, right? So yeah, that's it from my side.
So thank you a lot, Xavi. Quite interesting to see how Kiali can help to debug what the proxies in the Istio context are doing. So I guess that we have a last speaker. We are going to have an update of all the Jaeger features that are related to Istio and related to Kiali. So I guess that Gary, are you around?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks. Yeah, so the main focus of the Jaeger team at the moment and for the next couple of sprints is around a version 2, so the next major version of Jaeger and the Jaeger operator. Both of those are built to leverage the OpenTelemetry operator and collector, so it's quite a big re-architecture. In terms of the operator, it's a complete rebuild because it's based on the new operator framework, which is using QBuilder. So the bootstrap work in terms of creating the project infrastructure, the CI, the publishing images, and providing the initial work to deploy a collector using the OpenTelemetry operator has been done. On the Jaeger backend components, which are also based on the OpenTelemetry collector, the collector and the agent components were done as part of a previous release. So this sprint has been more focused on building the initial test infrastructure for those components, and in general trying to keep up with the releases in the OpenTelemetry community. So we've moved up to the 0.18 release, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks to a month, the GA of 1.10 of the OpenTelemetry collector will be available. And also listed there's some bug fixes we've been working on, and that's it.
Okay, so thank you a lot, Gary, for the updates of the Jaeger highlights. So thank you all. I know that we are a little bit run of time, so I'm going to stop the recording.